right. Well, thank you all that are in person and online have joined us for our nonprofit lunch and learn. We've had a great day so far. My name is Dawn Parker. I'm a software services manager here at Dean Dorton, and I have Kaydee Ruppert also joining me. And you've met Kaydee earlier today, but I have been in the software industry for most of my career, which is almost 30 years now. Not always with Sage Intacct, but in accounting software. I also started a nonprofit almost 15 years ago. I started a nonprofit school, and it was a school with a twist a bit. It was a school that was set to meet the learning styles of kids where they're at, even if they're super highly excelled or if they're behind. And what I didn't know when I started the school, that my kids were going to fall in all of those places. One of my kids, when I started the school, was still a toddler, and so he ended up being on that spectrum as well. So anyway, nonprofits are near and dear to my heart, and I look forward to showing Sage Intacct to you today. So we're going to have some polls just like we have earlier today, and you will dial 22333 and message Dean Dorton. If you're probably used to this by now, if you've been a part of the other presentations today. Our agenda is our objectives, we're going to identify some current issues and trends in nonprofits and learn possible ways to use technology to address challenges and maximize opportunities. We're going to have a brief overview of Dean Dorton. We're going to have an industry update from Kaydee. I'm going to show you a Sage Intacct demonstration, and then we'll wrap up and give you an opportunity to ask questions. So again, we have Kaydee join us, and I'm Dawn Parker. And then I'm just going to have a brief overview about Dean Dorton. We have about 367 employees. We have audit, task, risk, consulting, IT audit, compliance, and cybersecurity. We have offices in Kentucky and North Carolina and all sorts of clients in the for-profit and nonprofit arena. So I will turn it over to Kaydee now, and she will go over some industry updates.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm going to be brief, but just want to touch on a couple of things that are happening right now. Maybe. Why isn't it working now?
Oh, it's probably not hooked into that laptop. Use your arrows. Use your arrows.
Okay. Oh, first we have a poll. So in a word or short phrase, what's the biggest challenge currently facing your organization? And just a reminder then on how to join the poll. There's a QR code there if you wanted to scan that. Otherwise, you can log on by web or by text. So we'll give you a minute to do that. And then once you're on, if you could, in a word or a short phrase, let us know what you feel your biggest challenge is currently facing nonprofit organizations. Either if you're on a board or you're actually an employee at a nonprofit, we would love to have some insight into that. So, do you know if we're connected to the poll?
We should be, if you mouse down to the bottom, there should be a little thing that pops up and will let you switch to responses.
There we go. Wow. Everybody's got the same level of problems here, or challenges. Nothing, oh, there we go. I would be surprised if donations wasn't leading the way there, because we know we're seeing some trends nationwide on decreases in contributions. Talent, yeah, that's huge right now, being able to staff our organizations and have that consistency. Policy is interesting. I think sometimes organizations in their life cycles start out with a lot of things on a handshake and an agreement, and you're figuring out what will work for you and not necessarily getting that into policy form. And as you age as an organization, it is really important for your liability and for your consistency and your institutional history to really codify that policy and adopt something that then has a life cycle of its own that is annually or biannually renewed by a group of individuals who can come at it with fresh eyes and keep it consistent with the needs of your organization. Thank you. Those are great input. Oh, I keep clicking this now and the clicker's not like I'm gonna just take a few minutes here to give you a few industry updates. We've got some things going on in our world that may or may not include a government shutdown, so I'm going to talk about that for a minute. There are proposed changes in overtime rules that may become very impactful for a lot of nonprofit organizations. And then it's not new news, but we are still facing, all the data still points to a labor shortage in the nonprofit industry. So as you probably know, unless you don't own a television or a radio, we're getting close to our end of our fiscal year for the federal government, which is September 30th. And without a new budget extension or a continuing resolution or portions of the budget being voted on and passed, we will enter a stage that could be a full government shutdown or a partial government shutdown. We've had many of those over the years since this process of budget development has been adopted in the 70s. But we've really had 4 major government shutdowns over that time. We had a couple in the 90s. We had one in 2015 and then a partial shutdown recently. So we do have some historical data to draw on what happens in a government shutdown and how it will impact nonprofit organizations. There's always furloughed employees. So there's certain, if an area of government isn't funded, the employees in that area are either asked to work without pay for a certain period of time. That applies a lot of times to the military. And right now it's kind of important that applies to federal firefighters. You know, we're dealing with a lot of, this year we're just dealing with a lot of natural disasters, and those individuals oftentimes would be impacted by a government shutdown. So if you have those furloughed employees, those employees who either aren't working or are working without pay, their needs might need to be met by nonprofit organizations in the interim. They might need help from their food bank or from service organizations that can help them bridge that gap. There's also a ripple effect then on local businesses because you don't have that discretionary money coming into the community that's going to be, you know, you're going to maybe forego your Starbucks if you're not getting a check that week. So that has an impact then on the employees of Starbucks and whether or not they can continue to operate at the same level. So there's definitely a ripple impact that again loops back to the gaps that are filled by nonprofit organizations. And the backbone administration, what I mean by that is that even if things like Social Security are still funded, there's a lot of types of programming that are forward funded. So the funding's already been passed, the money is available, but if the individuals aren't present to be able to process those checks and, you know, review the compliance issues that go along with payments being made, we're going to see some bottlenecks in those processes. And that too can have a strong impact on nonprofits that rely on any sort of grant funding, and just on the community as a whole that demands the services of a lot of our nonprofit organizations. Government shutdown has a big economic impact in that what we've seen in the past is that the stock market gets really uncomfortable when there's a government shutdown. So you could see some dives in that area, which then, depending on the length of the shutdown, might have an impact on donors, their tendency to give donations. They might want to just hunker down for a while and figure out what's going on. So having a data system, and this is where it kind of ties in with Sage Intacct, if you have that ability to pivot quickly and understand who your donors are and what economic areas impact them, you will have a leg up on being able to be responsive to that and pivot accordingly. There's also, during these times of government shutdown, decreased demand for those non-essential goods. So again, even if you're not working in a nonprofit, or even if you're not working with government funding directly, there is that ripple effect that may very well impact your organizations. And there's going to be increased demand for essential goods and services, and a lot of our nonprofits provide essential goods and services. So it will be a stressful time. I touched on the donor impact already, but donors will be having a real life decrease potentially in the resources they have available or that they perceive to be available. There's just that income uncertainty for people that rely on a paycheck or a Social Security payment or a Medicare payment, those types of things from governmental sources. And then there's going to be a lot of donor fatigue because that ripple impact creates that demand on so many different organizations, faith-based organizations, nonprofit organizations. And the donors that do feel secure are going to be asked to give in many, many places. And we kind of touched on the shift in public need, that gap for essential services is really going to be made up by nonprofits. Hiring resistance is interesting, but that's what has happened historically during government shutdowns because of the uncertainty in the economy. A lot of organizations just kind of put a pause on hiring. So people that are currently unemployed, and I think we're fairly fortunate to have a low unemployment rate right now, but you won't see as much movement and ability to change jobs as we've seen over the last several years. So those are all things that are going to impact our nonprofits. Overtime rules are maybe less, not happening at the end of this week, but can be equally impactful on nonprofit organizations and some of the uncertainty that looms there. There's proposed changes to the Fair Labor Standards Act's annual salary threshold right now. This has happened before. It's happened many times over the life of the Fair Labor Standards Act. Sometimes it's moved forwards, sometimes it's been stopped. The general sentiment, according to the sources that I'm reading, I think it has some legs. So it's not happening immediately, but I do think there's going to be more movement towards making this something that manages itself going forward. That built-in increase either tied to some sort of a measure or tied to something that causes it to increase. It's a pretty big jump that's being proposed. And a lot of nonprofits do have salaried employees that meet one of those executive, administrative, or professional qualifications for exemption, which means that their job functions make it possible for them to be an exempt employee. And that means that their salary then isn't subject to overtime if they put in more than 40 hours in the week. A lot of nonprofits rely on individuals to work more than 40 hours a week, maybe not all the time, but some of the time. And they will really have to look hard at those positions now to determine whether or not they are best served by increasing the salary to the threshold level and recognizing that that may include a commitment to raising it at least every 3 years or at some junctures in the future. Or if they're better off reclassifying that position as an hourly position which means that you have to put an infrastructure in place to be able to track time and be able to comply with the laws that are in your community, your locality, and your state regarding overtime and time tracking and all the things that go with that. There's quite a bit of a risk if you're not paying overtime, and you should. So those are listed there. There's also impacts on workers' compensation. Your unemployment rates are tied to your total wages, so you want to have good estimates of what those costs are going to be. So here's where it kind of impacts. Obviously, it could impact the pay that you're putting out, but also maybe your benefits. Switching over to that third item there, changing the benefits, this might impact your 401ks. If your 401ks are based on total gross compensation and you're now going to be paying overtime, that could have a significant impact on what your expense is for 401k. So you may want to get ahead of that and look at your plan. There are ways that you can adjust your plan to exclude overtime or apply to groups of individual employees in different ways, or change your rates so that you can manage those expenses going forward. The biggest impact, though, I think, is that employee morale. People take pride in having an exempt position. Oftentimes, sometimes they feel resentful because they're not making the overtime pay. So you really need to know your employees individually and be able to have those conversations with them that are going to hold them up and continue to demonstrate the value they have in your organization, and that you're not facing a retention issue as a result of this change. Depending on the position, they might also be an employee that's in high demand outside of the nonprofit sector, and you want to get in front of that and be ready to deal with that. There are a lot of things that distinguish our organizations from for-profits. Pay is usually not one of them, but it's important to be able to know what your message is and be proactive in that retention. The labor shortage. So 2023, the National Council of Nonprofits just put out these survey results, so they're fresh off the presses. And labor shortage is still one of the top problems cited by nonprofit organizations in being able to accomplish their mission. They're just not able to keep all their positions filled. And these are the 5 barriers that are being cited for that. So I would encourage our nonprofit organizations to just be fully aware of this and do what we can to create, to use our technologies in a way that allows us to get ahead of these things, and that really tries to counter these things in those areas where you can't change. You can't change the challenges sometimes of a grant, but you can be really clear on what this position looks like and the rewards that come from doing that type of work, so that you're aligning the right people to the right positions and you're measuring the right things to lead to job satisfaction and just overall engagement, which will help you retain and avoid the costs of that turnover. So those are a few of the things that are, they're all kind of bummer things, but next time I will try to find some really exciting good things. There is a lot. I'm going to throw out one good thing. There is a lot of government funding right now. If you are doing any type of construction or remodeling that has anything to do with being able to be responsive to climate changes or using electricity more wisely or water, there's a lot of funding available for those types of efforts. So I would encourage you to do some exploration, and we would love to assist you in that on identifying maybe some opportunities to defer or to mitigate some of your costs in that area. So I guess that's kind of a little good news thing. But unfortunately, nonprofits are being tapped harder and harder to fill the gaps in our communities. And Dawn's going to tell us more about Sage Intacct, which I personally use with a lot of organizations and find is just a fantastic tool to be able to provide you that data you need to encourage donors, to retain employees, and to really be able to pivot to changing times more rapidly. So thank you, and I will give you back to Dawn.
Thanks, Katie. Okay, the first thing we're gonna do is take another poll. So how do you currently manage your nonprofit's financial data? Spreadsheets, QuickBooks, another accounting software, or other? And I would dare say it's probably spreadsheets and, so there probably should have been a and there, but anyway, you can choose your answer. We have QuickBooks and another software. So that's what I was kind of expecting. A lot of QuickBooks is declining. A lot of nonprofits, including the one that I still sit on the board for, the private school, still use QuickBooks, and I'm ashamed to say that, and I'm getting ready to show you Sage, not because QuickBooks is the choice for that school, they just haven't made that change, but Sage, I'm going to show you how Sage is a clear winner over QuickBooks. Okay, so we've got QuickBooks and another accounting software. So let's dive in. So Intacct was founded in 1999, and now well over 20 years, well in 2017, Sage acquired Intacct. But Sage Intacct is 20 years is in the making and is consistently growing into different markets. Sage Intacct is recognized by the finance leadership. We are the choice of the AICPA, and that is a very big deal. We're super proud of that. We've won all kinds of industry awards, and we have lots of great nonprofit customer references. You can see some of those there. Those are just a small snapshot, and we're going to take a look at some case studies as well. I'll be glad to share these case studies with you in full if you would like. The thing about Sage Intacct that we're going to talk a lot about today is that dimensions make the difference. Dimensions are tags. You can tag every transaction with a dimension. So you have 7 out-of-the-box dimensions: location, department, class, vendor, customer, and item. And then you have other specialty dimensions and some like project dimensions and your program dimension. These dimensions are user-defined for you. You can repurpose those, you can rename those. If you want to call a customer, a donor, or whatever, you can do that. You can make them work for your organization. But you can tag these transactions down to the general ledger level. So instead of having a chart of accounts, let's say you've got salary expense, and you've got salary expense for marketing and salary expense for operating. And so you've got 5,100, 100, and you've got 5,100, 200. That is no more. With the dimensions, you've just got 5,100. You've got salary expense. And then you have all of these tags that you can tag those transactions and then pull reports and put that data on dashboards. So that's the difference maker with Sage Intacct. We have taken chart of accounts down from 1,800 accounts to like less than 200 accounts because of the dimensions, because of the tags. So these are just, we're gonna not spend a lot of time here, but these are just 3 nonprofit case studies that Sage has done. And we're gonna look at some of the efficiencies. The challenges before for the Boys and Girls Club of Tarrant County is they used Microsoft GP and they were heavily reliant on Excel. And you all know that Excel, we're accountants, we love Excel, but it comes with a lot of human error and a lot of exporting and importing and formatting. So they were having a lot of that with Dynamics, and it presented a lot of challenges. So with Sage Intacct, they gained 50 to 60% financial efficiency. Their board reporting was cut from hours to minutes. They avoided $65,000 in a headcount. So they cut an entire headcount or didn't have to hire a headcount. We're facing those problems now, hiring headcount, and they avoided one entire headcount. And they had speed and simplicity in merging two sister clubs. So that is the Boys and Girls Club of Tarrant County. Rocky Mountain Youth Group, they had some different challenges. They had increasingly complex financial structure that made reporting difficult, and they struggled to manage QuickBooks and their reporting setup. So those dimensions we talked about earlier, they take that reporting and that structure, and you can design it how you design. So you create your dimensions, and then you can create dimension structures to report whatever way works best for your organization. So their gains were, they were freed up 30 hours monthly doing manual work. They simplified the payroll data import from ADP to Sage Intacct. And if any of you have exported data from your payroll system and tried to get it in the format that you had to import into whatever accounting software you use, you know that it can be very labor intensive. So they simplified that with Sage Intacct's importing capabilities. They streamlined their grant billing and GL and dynamic allocations. They saved 15 hours a month on that alone. And then they grew by 2 times their grant funding because of better visibility and transparency. That is huge to me. They increased funding by $340,000 just because of that increased visibility and transparency that Sage Intacct affords them. So they were freed up to do other things and with that transparency. So they had a 50% increase in efficiency and 80% faster month-end close. And these are not made-up stories, and nobody's paid for these testimonials. These are real Sage Intacct users. And then the last one is towards employment. They're a nonprofit, and their challenges before were, again, with QuickBooks. So that's a repeated thing we see with nonprofits. A lot of nonprofits start out using QuickBooks because it's cheap, but it doesn't meet those needs. It doesn't grow with you. So they were using QuickBooks. It was very time-consuming for audit prep. If anybody's prepped for an audit before, you know that there's just hours and hours of audit prep. Sage Intacct should greatly diminish that audit prep. There will still be some, of course, but if you prepare in advance, Sage Intacct is set up to really cut down on that. They had no automated cost allocation, and it was a very time-intensive process. So they were unable to allocate their cost. You'll see that Sage Intacct has a dynamic, we have a transaction allocation process and a dynamic allocation process that allows you to take things such as fringe benefits or rent expense and allocate it over your different departments or programs or whatever you choose to allocate over. But towards employment avoided $45,000 in headcount and reduced the time required for payroll data imports for 80%. That's a big deal. So like I said, these are real people, real testimonials, and there's lots more that I could share with you. All right, another poll, and then we'll jump into the demo. Which of these would have the greatest positive impact on your organization? Better reporting and insights, automating, eliminating manual tasks, more confidence in compliance, or saving on overhead costs? And again, it's probably a combination of some of these, but just choose the one that you think would have the most impact on your organization, positive impact. It is trending just as I would expect it to be, with better reporting and insights. And so we're going to jump into the demo, and I'm going to show you how Sage Intacct can help you tackle those reporting and insight issues. All right, let me jump over to okay, so you will notice that I am in Sage Intacct. Sage Intacct is a web-based software. You can be logged on anywhere at any time. It does offer multi-factor authentication and single sign-on and all of those things to reduce risk that Jason was talking about earlier this morning. So those controls are there, but it is a web-based software. I am logged in as Carla the controller, which means that I have given myself full access to everything. So when I click on my drop downs and my menus, you will see all of the modules. But if you had AP users that were only allowed to be in accounts payable, then that's all they would see on their menus. You choose how you set up your security. You can set up security to different reports or windows. It's very user-defined. All right, so I'm on Carla Controller's dashboard. And the first thing we're going to take a look at, you see here at the top, we have these rectangle boxes. They're what we call performance cards. And I can see just their quick snapshots of what's going on in my organization. They're user-defined. Carla, the controller, is interested in her G&A expense, her AP or cash on hand, and her AR, but you may be interested in something completely different. But Carla notices pretty quickly that her G&A expenses are down for the month. That's good. But she also notices that her cash for 1 month is up $2 million. Well, that sounds good, but probably not realistic. Generally, unless there's an event going or something really big, cash probably didn't jump $2 million in 1 month. So Carla wants to know why that is. So she's going to drill down on that performance card, and she can see compared to November that December 31, 21, there is that difference. So she's going to continue to drill down. And she's now in her general ledger report. She can scroll through. So far, nothing's jumping out at me. Everything looks like pretty normal. But then all of a sudden, she sees a $2 million entry here to revenue. So she can drill down on that. And if the person that had entered this had entered an attachment, that attachment would be here. But she can see that in December, they had a $2 million entry to revenues unrestricted for food distribution. This is All Are Well Food Shuttle. That's the company that I'm using. And so they probably had a catering event in December because they do different events to raise money for their food shuttle. So Carla's probably like, okay, well, that's a legitimate income, so we get to keep it. But she could drill down from her dashboard and quickly see that information. Let's talk a little bit about All Are Well. All Are Well Food Shuttle has different programs for people that are food insecure. They have a food distribution. I can look down in my expenses by program type and see they've got a few food distribution operation, a farm and farm stand. They've got a food truck and catering, etc. But they've got the different programs to help those that are food insecure. This expenses by program type, it's a little graph here, a little pie chart. I can click on the looking glass and it will make it larger, and I can hover over each piece of the pie to see what the expenses are for that time period for each of those different programs. She also likes to, Carla, this is her user-defined dashboard, but she can see her revenues in a donut graph on the bottom left as well. You'll also notice that as Carla, the controller, she has the opportunity to approve transactions, to have that before transactions are paid, she needs to approve them. So she's got on her dashboard the approved purchasing transactions, and I can click on the looking glass. And right from her dashboard, she's able to view, approve, or decline transactions without ever leaving her dashboard. And I could maximize this, and she could scroll through it and approve or decline. If she declines it, she can put notes that will be sent to whoever the transaction originated from. Okay. Carla also wants to know, someone sent her a note and said, I want to know what part of contributions for this year were in kind. Well, instead of having to go to filing cabinets or print a lot of reports and spend time to figure that out, Carla can click right here on contributions from her dashboard, and she can see that $163,000 were in-kind donations for the year ended 12/31/21. So all of that, Carla has answered all of those questions from her dashboard. Carla can have more than one dashboard. If she wants one dashboard that focuses on cash and another dashboard that focuses on programs or whatever, she absolutely can have those. Different users can have different dashboards. The next dashboard that we're going to take a look at is a program manager dashboard. Again, these dashboards are user defined. It comes with some out-of-the-box formatted type dashboards, but you decide what's on your dashboard. The program manager for the food distribution program is interested in things that he manages. And so he wants to know what are his revenues and expenditures for his program. And you see that it's filtered here by food distribution. I could change it to farm and farm stand or whatever. And he, in his performance card, he is tracking statistical information. He's tracking not only the financial side of things, but how many meals are served. So he can quickly see at a glance that 1,900 meals were served this month to people that are food insecure, and that 750 backpacks were distributed to kids to take home from school that maybe would not have food on the weekends or in the summer. So from his dashboard, he's able to pull in that data from Sage Intacct. It's not sitting in spreadsheets. You don't have to go, look in spreadsheets or whatever to see how many meals were served. That data is in Sage Intacct through statistical accounts. They're entered just like regular journal entries. You can import that information into Sage Intacct, but it's all housed in the same place. You'll also notice that this program manager has got some budget problems going on. You see these red, this is his budget, his program budget versus actuals, and there's some intelligence built around in this report of when the budget goes negative to highlight it in red. Well, he has a lot of red, so he can see at a glance that he needs to do something. He needs to talk to his board or reallocate some funds or something's going on, but that intelligence is built in so that he can just quickly take a look at his dashboard every day and make those decisions. He also has custom navigation. So you can add custom navigations. If there are things that you do in your job every day, inside or outside of Intacct, you can add that custom navigation to your dashboard. And as Carla had, he's also got purchasing approvals and other graphs on his dashboard. So again, dashboards are user defined. You can have more than one. You can have as many as you want, but they're just a powerful way, a snapshot to see what's going on in your data. The next thing we're going to take a look at are reports in Sage Intacct. And we're going to go to the Report Center. And in the Report Center, we see that we have the ability to favorite reports, and then we have a list of all the reports. Sage Intacct comes with lots and lots of out-of-the-box reports that you can modify those and save them as your own, or you can create new reports from start. But there are a lot of reporting capabilities in Sage Intacct, and they're very user-friendly to make changes, to make them yours. You can memorize reports that you use over and over, and you can schedule reports to be sent out. If you've got a pack of reports that you send to a board member, at a certain time every month, you can schedule those to be sent out. It reduces that admin oversight, which reduces the need for headcount. Okay. And then you can have a list of custom reports that you've customized. I'm going to go to my favorites. These are reports that I use all the time. So I'm going to look at my functional expenses department comparison. And I'm going to make it 12/31/21 because that is where my demo data resides. And you will see here that this report is by department. I have over in the left-hand column, I've got my accounts, and then I've got my food distribution, farm stand, etc. in my columns. You decide these columns, these are your dimensions. So you could have any of your dimensions in your columns or in your rows. You decide. You'll notice that I've got personnel expenses, and then under personnel expenses, I've got salaries and benefits, etc. Personnel expenses is an account group. So you create account groups on your reports and group accounts together that you want to report on. It doesn't have to be the same for every report. If you want on one report to have personnel expenses and include benefits, and then another to have, you know, just salary, you can do that. You create your account groups, and they can be different across all your various reports. Okay. All right, so we're going to take a look at another report. The next report we're going to look at is our grant positions report. And you will notice here in this grants and contracts position report that it is showing my different contracts and grants. Again, this is a tag, this is a dimension. So this is that I've got in this time they're in the rows of my report. But you also notice that the revenue is inception to date. If I was looking at this and I said, well, I really want to see in revenue just for this month, but it'll take me too long to make that change. It really won't. In Sage Intacct, I can make that change in just a matter of moments. So I'm going to go back over to that report, and I'm going to edit it and go to columns, and I'm going to go to this revenue book column, and I'm going to change inception to date to current month. Well, if I can see it, let's change it to current. There's current month. And I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to preview the report. And now you see, with just a matter of seconds, I changed that from inception to date to current month, just like that. The reporting changes in Sage Intacct are that easy. Sage Intacct is built by accountants for accountants. So you don't have to have a degree in engineering or a programming degree or computer science to make those changes in Sage Intacct, because it's built by people like me and you, for people like me and you. So like I said, Sage Intacct comes with several out-of-the-box reports, but you can change those to be to make them your own. And you can start from scratch and create new reports very easily. The next thing we're going to take a look at is our general ledger. And general ledger, I'm not going to show you things today that you would expect in accounting software today. You would expect to be able to do journal entries in accounting software. You would expect to be able to pay AP bills. But I am going to show you a few things that set Sage Intacct apart, that will add efficiency, that will reduce the need for headcountants, free people up so they can carry out your mission and not worry so much about the admin burden. But if I go to general ledger, and I'm going to go to setup, and I'm going to go to account allocation definitions, we saw earlier in those case studies that a couple of those talked about the need to allocate information. So they were taking spreadsheets and they were manually creating allocations every month. And in this allocation, it's fringe benefits. And fringe benefits is not a static percentage. You can't say every month I want to take, I mean, you could, but generally you do not want to take 25% of fringe benefits this month to this department, 25 to another. But generally you want to take fringe benefits and base it on what your salary was by that program or by that department. So Sage Intacct allows you to set this up. It's called a dynamic allocation, and it takes the basis, which is salaries, and it creates that calculation for you and posts that allocated entry and spreads fringe based on the salary across those departments or programs or whatever dimension you choose each month. So you don't have to spend that time in Excel. And allocations is an area when you use Excel, there's a lot of room for human error. The dynamic allocations module reduces that room for error. I'm working with a customer right now, and we just set up 700 allocations. That's not normal, but it's really gonna take things that they're doing in spreadsheets. I mean, she has sent me spreadsheet after spreadsheet after spreadsheet. They've been doing for years. They've been using Dynamics GP, and they've been doing all of those allocations in Excel. And when she goes live, she will no longer have to do that. Okay, so that's one of the things that sets our general ledger apart. And another for nonprofits is restriction release. So you may have some restricted funds, and there's certain criteria you've got to meet before you can, those funds become unrestricted. So Sage Intacct tracks that, and then you can go in and run a restriction release. And this is the information, it's just this simple. You just fill out the time period and where the funds sit, and then it will create a restriction release. And you can see that it's taking those funds from temporarily restricted to unrestricted and making that journal entry for you. So again, something that you probably have to handle manually today in your accounting software, but would no longer be manual in Sage Intacct. Okay, so that is some things that set the general ledger apart. Again, you can do all the normal things you can normally do in Sage in the general ledger, but those are just some different things. Another thing in general ledger that I want to point out again that I talked about on the dashboard are the statistical accounts. You can have statistical accounts to track anything you want to track. If you want to track square footage, if you want to track number of people served or whatever, you can track it in statistical accounts and then pull that data into reports so that you can run your expense by person served or your expense by space or whatever. So that's a big deal. A lot of people need that capability today, and they're producing it, but they're producing it in Excel. All right. Now we're going to jump over to accounts payable. And in accounts payable, of course, you could pay a bill, all of that. That's very normal. You would expect that from an accounting software. But something that you might not expect that Sage Intacct has that some other software don't is the approval process, the accountability, the things that keep the auditors happy and keep us all above board so that that our donors feel comfortable giving us money because we're being good stewards. But the AP module itself has 3 different approval processes. It has a new approval process with AP vendors. So I'll show you that in a moment, but you can make a change to a vendor and that change or that addition has to be approved before you can pay a bill or post a bill for that vendor. In addition to vendors, it also has an approval process for bills. So you can have someone that enters bills, but before they're posted, you can set up a hierarchy of who has to approve them. That can be value-based, or it can be value and department-based, meaning that whatever department it's in, then someone from that department has to approve it. It can also be like a named approver. If you have certain people in your organization that always approve AP bills, then you can set that up as well. And the third layer of approval in AP is the bill approval. So not only do you have vendor and you have bill, but before the check can actually be cut or the ACH or whatever, there is a payment approval that can be set up as well. And the payment approvals are value-based. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly show you a vendor approval. So if I go into AP vendors and I'm going to look up Harkin. And we see right now that Harkin Utility Services is the name of this vendor, and they're in an approved status. But I'm going to edit Harkin. And they shouldn't be Harkin Utility Services. They should be Harker Utilities, Inc. So I made that change. That's not a big deal, but if I was changing, whatever, if I was changing that information and I go to submit it, now you'll see quickly that Harkin Utility Services was changed to submitted, meaning that I cannot go in now and try to enter an AP bill until whoever has approval authority approves that. If I go into AP bills now and add a bill, in a moment maybe, it's going to show me, if I choose Harkin, I quickly get a pop-up that says this vendor is in submitted status. It will let me enter it, but it's only in draft status. It will not let me post this bill until that approval has been submitted. So that's an area of control that allows us as nonprofits to continue to be great stewards of the money given to us. Okay. The other thing I want to show you is in the pay bills section of AP bills, you have several opportunities for automation here. Let me back up just a moment. Before it becomes you're ready to pay it, we also have AP bill automation, meaning that your vendors can email you the invoices to an email address that you give them, and the system will ingest those in a draft status. And over time, it will learn where to post those. It'll read the vendor and the terms off of the invoice. It'll attach the invoice to the AP bill. So you can have that. That's also removes some of that AP data entry because of the AP automation that you can, let's say you don't want vendors emailing them directly to an email address, but you have a digital copy, you can also upload that digital copy. And those are automatically added into Sage Intacct in a draft status, and you have the ability to make changes to those before you post them. Once you've entered your bills or AP automation has added them, then you're ready to pay them. You can also pay them automatically. Sage, you can create of course you can use a check, but you can also create an ACH file, and you can also use something called CSI payments. CSI payments allows you decide who you're going to pay or what you want to pay this check run, and CSI takes care of the rest. They work with your vendors to decide if they want to accept vendor cards, the virtual card, or if they want to get checks or if they want to get ACH, but they handle that. You don't lose control of deciding who you're going to pay. You still pick who you're going to pay, but they handle after that. You don't have to worry about mailing out any checks or anything like that. CSI handles that for you. If they choose virtual card, if your vendors will accept virtual cards, then it's a lot less expensive to do that. Okay. All right, so we have looked at the GL and AP. I do want to show you something on an AP bill. So if we go back to AP bills, I want to show you a tool called Spend Insight. So I am going to look up Holt Construction. So if I take a look at this bill to Holt Construction or Consulting, you will notice all of the information that you would expect on a AP bill, but something that is different with Sage Intacct is this Show Spend Insight. If I click on this Show Spend Insight, this compares what I'm trying to pay to the budget. So I can see that for this budget line item, that I'm going to be way over budget if I enter this expense. And I didn't have to go pull up my budget in Excel and compare this GL account and this department, or pull up my budget in another budgeting software. I did it right here on my AP bill using the Spend Insight, the spend management tool. Again, another layer of accountability. So Carla Grace is the controller, and she wants to pay this bill anyway, even though she's way over budget. You'll notice in the bottom, we have a messaging tool. It's called Collaborate. And Carla says, I realize this expense is way over budget, but I've got approval from the CFO to pay it. So this is the Collaborate tool. It's not only in AP, it's throughout the system. And Carla can put that note. She can even tag the CFO if she wants, so he gets a copy of it. But this note travels with this AP bill throughout the system. So it will be there when the auditors question why Carla made this expense way over budget. It'll be there at month-end reporting. It sticks. So that's called the Collaborate tool, and it's like a messaging tool right on the journal entry or right on the AP bill. You may have also noticed on Carla's dashboard, she had Collaborate in the top left because she wanted to see those messages every day. So you can put Collaborate on your dashboard if you choose. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is donor receipts. A lot of nonprofits use a donor management system, and they're a little hesitant because they're not quite sure how they're going to integrate that with Sage Intacct or whatever accounting system. Sage Intacct, we have the Sage Intacct Marketplace, and those are vendors, third parties that Sage integrates with, and they've certified to say that that integration is there. But one such integration is Donor Perfect, and you may use Donor Perfect or use something like it, and you can automatically bring that data through import into Sage Intacct. You can also use the accounts receivable module for some of that information. But let's say, for this demonstration, that you're using a donor management system and you want to see that integration. So I'm going to go over to my general ledger, and I'm going to go to, where is my journal entry? Okay, I must have cut something off. Well, there we go. I was like, wow. So I'm going to go to my general ledger and to my journal entries, and you will see there that I've got lots of journals. Sage Intacct comes with several out-of-the-box journals, but there you also have user-defined journals, and you have user-defined books. So if you want to create like a book just for allocations, you can do that. But in this example, we're going to look at our cash receipts journal, and you'll see this receipt that says donor receipts daily. So we're going to view that, and this was integrated from Donor Perfect, and you will see that I can see all of my donors. Again, this donor very well could be the customer dimension that you just repurposed as your donor, and I can see who what the donations were and who they came from, and this information started in my donor management system. All right, we're going to jump over to our grants tracking and billing module. So we're going to take a look at a grant. We're going to look at the Skousky grant, Skousky Foundation Award. And this is a repository for you to save all of your information about your grants. You see all of the normal information that you would expect on a grant for a grant tracking tool, contacts, etc. Again, here's Collaborate. This fund, Carla has put that this funder prefers to be billed once a month on the 5th of the month. So if you want to keep your funders happy and bill them when they would like to bill, that's a note that Carla has put on this grant. You've got the beginning and end dates, of course, what type of grant it is, if it's a grant or endowment or event, etc. You've got additional information like revenue restrictions. And if it's a federal grant and you're tracking the CFDA number, you've got that opportunity as well. Lots of data that you can track here. You also can have user-defined fields. You can add up to 72 user-defined fields per object. The objects are basically pages. So I do not think you're going to run out of user-defined fields. I can't imagine that. But anyway, so you've got up to 72 user-defined fields per object. You can have your billing terms for your funder. What dimensions are tied to this grant? You can attach documents, etc. You've got resources and pricing, so you can assign resources to this grant. Then you've got your project and grant summary. So this is just a summary page, a financial summary of the revenue and expense and hours that have been posted against this grant, all in one place. You've got invoice options. If the actual billings exceed projected billing amount, what do you want to do? Do you want to do nothing, issue a warning, or prevent the billing? And then you have tasks. If this is a milestone grant and you've got to meet certain milestones before you can bill for them, then you can track those tasks here. If we were billing for this grant, we could only bill for the survey site and the building plans because they're the only ones that have been completed. The other three are still in progress, and so we couldn't bill for those yet, and you track that here. I'm going to show you how easy it is to bill your funders. So I'm going to go to Project and Grants, and I'm going to go to Generate Invoices. And I'm going to choose a different grant than the one we were just looking at. I'm going to choose my Health Initiative Year 2. And I'm going to say Preview. And just that easy, it takes and consolidates all of the timesheet entries that have been put against this grant, all of the AP bills, all the employee expenses from the time and expense module. It takes all of that and brings it in, and you have the opportunity to generate an invoice for that. Or if there's something that you're not quite ready to bill the funder for yet, you can uncheck these boxes. But you choose it because of those dimensions, because of those tags, it knows what should be allocated to this grant. If I go down to accounts payable expenses, you'll see that I can view the source. I can view the AP bill right from this grant tracking screen. And if everything looks like I would like it to, then I could just create invoice, click create invoice from here. It creates that invoice, and you can email it or mail it to your funder just by the click of a button, because you used the tags, the dimensions, and you mark those transactions as billable. There's a checkbox to mark them as billable when you enter your AP bills. Okay. We are about done, but I just want to touch on just quickly on cash management. Of course, we have a bank reconciliation module, but we also have a credit card module. So you can reconcile credit cards very seamlessly, just like you can bank accounts within Sage Intacct. So we won't look at that today, but I just wanted to point that out because reconciling bank statements can be a big deal, but reconciling credit cards, if you have a lot of expenses on credit cards, can take a lot of time. And we have bank feeds, so it can pull those bank transactions in and those credit card transactions in to auto match. You set up rule sets so it knows what to match. Of course, you can unmatch it if it didn't match correctly, but you create those rules. Okay. All right, so I am going to pause, and I'm going to go back to Carla's dashboard. But what questions do we have today? Does anybody have any questions? Anybody? Have any questions online, Nikki?
I've got one.
Okay.
I'm interested in the statistical accounts. Is there a limit on how many stat counts you can have?
There is not.
Nope.
No
And
limit.
then you can create reports off of those. And
Absolutely.
mix and match financial, non-financial.
Yes, there's a great question. His question was, is there a limit on statistical accounts? There is not. And can you mix and match statistical and non-statistical data on reports? Absolutely, you can.
I
The
don't
other
think
benefit, sorry, Katie. The other benefit of statistical accounts too is they maintain historical balances. So you can compare to prior periods. So if you do an entry and say, I've got 200 donors this month, you can see how many donors you had in the prior period, prior year, and compare it. And you can also take those statistical values and do calculations within your financial reports. So, Don referenced it, but if you've got total expenses of $100,000 and you got 200 donors, you can divide that to see what your cost per donor, that's probably not the best example, but constituents or some of the stats or KPIs that Katie and Dave talked about this morning, having those tracked in there, you can put them on the financials with the relevant sections, but also do math with them. So you don't have to take it to Excel to do those kind of calculations.
And that may help with some grant compliance too.
Absolutely.
That requires tracking non-financial.
It does.
In
And
the 990 too, you have reporting some of that stuff, the stuff on the 990.
yeah, a lot of people will actually lay out financial reports to answer the 990 on it. You can build that, and we've helped a lot of clients do it so that it's there. But one of the other things, to Bill's point on the grant compliance, so Dawn touched on the dynamic allocations, and I don't think she really played it up as much as she could have. She was kind of humbled about it, but you can stack those. So you can have one allocation that affects an account, and it can trigger another allocation based on the effect that it just did. And then in addition to that, for people like Bill in the room, who are the auditors, it maintains all of that audit documentation to how and why that was done. So there's a roadmap backwards into how that was done for your compliance, for grant reporting compliance. So you can dig in and see at any point how it calculated what it was going to do and the supporting detail behind that to make sure it falls in line with what that grant said you could or couldn't allocate.
Absolutely. Yep. Dynamic allocations they're a big deal, and they are powerful. And like I said, with my customer that has so many, she has to run a set, and then a set affects another set. And like I said, it probably takes weeks of her job away that she's been doing in Excel.
If you currently are using QuickBooks and you have Donor Perfect as your donor database, how cumbersome is it to transfer information over to this platform? And
Great question. If you currently use QuickBooks or any other system, it's really not that cumbersome because Sage Intacct has a phenomenal import capability. So we provide, or Sage Intacct provides, the templates in the format they need them in. And so if you can get the data out and then map it to your new chart of accounts, because chances are you would want to change your chart of accounts, especially if you're coming from QuickBooks. And then you just put the data in those templates and we can import it in, or you can import it in. It's a click of a button to import data. A lot of you may have PTSD from past changes from accounting software where it's really, really hard to get the data out and back in. But it's not that way with Sage Intacct. The templates make it a lot easier.
And we've got a lot of experience of helping people move from QuickBooks. So that's part of the process that Don's team goes through, is what's that look like and what's that effort look like. And there's conversations around how much and different, thoughts on what you need from that perspective. But as she mentioned, the templates are really easy. They're Excel based. So it kicks out the file for you. You get the data and pull it in.
Good questions. Small group, great questions. Anybody else have questions?
can you talk about the cost versus QuickBooks and
Jason can.
It's supposed to be show. It is more expensive than
Figured.
QuickBooks. But the pricing varies by organization and size. They are very friendly for nonprofits, so they give a discount to nonprofits off the top. And a lot of it depends on how complex, because no two nonprofits are the same, right? So we might have some that are very basic and don't need any extra modules. They just need the core system. And then we've got some that are very complex, like Don mentioned, if you're doing heavy grants and those kind of deeper functionalities have some costs associated to them, the number of users you have. But we can put together an estimate for you pretty quickly to answer a few questions.
Any other questions?
Don, do you ever have clients who give board members or committee members access to the dashboards?
Absolutely. The board members, a great use of the dashboards are for board members. You can buy what we call employee users, which are very inexpensive, and they don't have access to change anything or anything like that, but that you can create a dashboard just for them. So they can have real-time access every day if they want it to what's going on, to how many people you're serving if you're using statistical accounts, and what your financials looks like. And they can, if they're worried about cash, they can keep an eye on that. Whatever you create on their dashboard, your board members can have an insight into that by just having a read-only, an employee user.
What would be the benefit of them doing that versus you printing a copy of it and handing it to them?
The benefit would be that A, you don't have to print the copy and get it to them or email to them or whatever, so it reduces your admin burden. And B, they have insight. So if they need to make, they have real-time insight. So if they need to make decisions, or if they're preparing for a board meeting, they have it now. They're not waiting till month end or whenever to get the data. They've got it right now.
And I'd add one more point to that. That was a leading question, sorry.
I figured it was.
Because it prints funky.
Well, but the drill down capability. So, you give somebody a report and then you get, 50 questions back. Well, what was in this account? Why is this so high? With the dashboards, if you give them online access to it, they can, if they have security, they can drill down on those blue dollars. So if we look at it and say, why is there $2 million worth of contributions? I thought there was going to be more or less. They can drill down in that to see what made those up. So a lot of times it helps reduce the questions. And that same thing's true for your internal staff, like program managers, grant managers. You give them the employee access and limit what they can see. And it lets them answer a lot of their own questions and relieves a lot of the email noise that you get on what is this? And I thought it was this, and why is this hitting this number?
Absolutely. Yeah, the drill down is powerful. You can go back to you can drill as much security as you give them access to. They can drill down to the original entry. They can see the attachment. They can see any notes and collaborate. They can see all of that just starting at a dashboard.
We also have some clients who have started giving their auditors a read-only access. And instead of them spending lots of time during the audit chasing things down and handing it to them, they tell them to go get it themselves. And they can get in, and if you've attached your supporting documentation to the transactions, you've got it all right there, and it makes it that a more efficient process.
Had one of those last week, but called inquiring about access for their auditor. Anything else?
I do not see any questions in the virtual chat. So I think
We're done.
if no one else has any more questions in the room, or from our friends in Raleigh, we'll go ahead and conclude.
Right on time. Good job,
Right on
Don.
time.
All right. All right. Thank you all.